to take a little bit of time to kind of talk about the process of making the game for my kids in Unreal. I had a lot of people kind of reach out to me and ask me, how did you make it? What was kind of the steps from start to finish? And so we'll kind of go through everything from the 2D concept phase to 3D to things like Blender and Maya to Unreal, and then even things like Fiverr and Mixamo. And yeah, I think that's it. So I shared a video kind of preview, everyone. So if you've seen that, great, kind of know what we're talking about. If you haven't, I'll post that link in the description below, and then also just run this game real quick. So that was the start screen. Here's the player selection screen. So these are my two daughters, my twin daughters. So I made this game for them. Allows them to kind of pick themselves and pick their outfits. So we had just gone to Disney at this time, so I made them that. But we'll start with Edison. Here's the control screen. Here's kind of the antagonist. So basically, the gist of the game is, it's set in the town that they live. So Glen Ellen. They're kind of running around collecting, letters. So they're 6 years old. So learning their letters, learning their numbers, and so forth. And then basically these monsters kind of spawn anytime a letter spawns into the town. And so I originally didn't have the monsters, but after playing it for a while, I'm like, okay, it's fun kind of collecting the letters, but they kind of need an antagonist to make it a little more fun. And then also I got to do some cool stuff with, of course that's super loud, I got to do some cool stuff with AI and behavior trees. Of course, that was the metro train that's in our town that just went by. Teach them about train safety if they get run over. And then here's a power wheel that they had as a child, or as children, which adds a fun kind of driving element and kind of run over things, and I can slam into this porta potty, hit that, and yeah, so that's kind of a preview of the game. We'll talk more about this stuff in a little bit. There's some more details, but yeah, this is the game that I'm talking about. So let me exit out of this. So let's start at the beginning. So about 7 or 8 years ago, I was working at Walgreens. I had a coworker and I who were kind of, I'm an iOS developer. I should probably start with that. Was building apps for a while, more than 10 years at this point. And so I had a coworker who was like, let's build kind of a Christmas game. And so as a developer, and he was an illustrator, we created this 2D Christmas game. And I actually had a ton of fun doing it. And so ever since then, I had this kind of bug of, okay, I really want to build a 3D game. But obviously the disciplines with 3D game development are much greater than 2D game development. A lot of similar concepts and like collisions and, atlases, texture atlases, sprite sheets and so forth. And when I built that game, it was with Apple's Sprite Kit, basically Sprite Kit, which is their 2D game engine. And so when I got into the 3D game development, I was like, okay, I logically started with Apple Scene Kit, which is their 3D game development. So let me show you a quick demo of that, because it's funny because I still have it. So here is, and this is a YouTube video. I'll pause it here so you can see. Here's kind of where I started. So this is tvOS. So again, another nice thing about Scene Kit, iOS is firmware, because you can build it once and deploy it on iOS, on tvOS, and obviously iOS encompasses both iPhone and iPad. And so you can see in the background is Blender. You have a 3D mesh with a rudimentary skeleton or rig. Very simple at that point. There's no facial rigging. It's pretty much arms, leg, and torso and so forth. And so I started there, and I was doing, you can see here, I was even early on, I was thinking about changing their outfit. And then I had already started modeling the town. So once this loads, you'll kind of see the town. So let me pause it there. So I'd gotten pretty far in Scene Kit. I just wasn't happy with the 3D model. I think a person I showed it to was like, oh, they kind of look scary. They don't really look too much like my daughters. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna hire a 3D artist to do the 3D models, just because I do a lot of 3D modeling, but not doing it every single day. I'm not as proficient with kind of organic geometry like character development. I'm pretty good at building 2D, not 2D, but like primitive. So like boxes, cubes, anything that's like the primitive. So like the town. If you look at the town here, like I modeled all that, but it's basically just cubes, right? And triangles and pyramids and all that stuff. So yeah, I kind of knew where my skills kind of ended and where I kind of needed to get help. So what I did was, I was okay. So I'm ready to hire a 3D artist, and so of course I'm like going on Twitter, I'm going to Instagram, I'm searching for 3D artists, sending direct messages on Instagram saying, hey, are you open for work, and how much does it cost, and so forth. And a lot of people obviously weren't open for work, and if the ones they were, it was quite expensive. And so watching YouTube, I was watching these videos, and this thing about Fiverr, Fiverr came up, and they were doing some demo of like 3D rendering architecture diagram, and they hired 3 different people, and there was 3 different interpretations of the architectural rendering, and I actually really liked that concept, and the price was quite cheap. And so I went to Fiverr, and I started looking for 3D artists. So I'm gonna go over to Fiverr. And so what I would do in here is I'd search for 3D character modeling, and I would go through all the listings, and I'd try to find someone who kind of looked and matched the style that I was looking for. And so this is actually the person I went with, and I'll talk more about that. But I think I went through 10 or 12 profiles, sent a bunch of messages, and actually started finding out the common question was, do you have a concept sketch? For me, I was like, I'm just going to send this 3D artist photos of my daughter, maybe the model that I kind of already built, and they would just take it from there. But no, a lot of them actually expected a kind of 2D concept sketch in either an A or T pose. And so then I had to basically go back and say, okay, first I need a 2D concept sketch. And so that's kind of exactly what I did. So I'm going to go and find the ones. This was the artist I chose with, and you can see I sent a lot of messages to a lot of people. So the first thing I did was I came up with a brief. So I downloaded this already. So I came up with this brief, and so I basically said, okay, this is what I need. So I basically need this kind of 2D concept sketch this is a T-pose, showing front, 3/4 side, back view. And then I said, this is the style that I'm looking for. So I really like this kind of cute, larger head, larger proportion, excuse me, graphical style. And then just some more examples. And then I attached a bunch of pictures of my one daughter. I try to include like front poses, close-ups of her face, and then we took some kind of side profile pics and kind of the back of her head pics. And so this was the concept or brief I started with. And so what I did, and you're kind of seeing some foreshadowing, what I did was I started noticing that for a 2D artist, it was quite cheap. It was anywhere from $5 to $25. And so I was like, hey, maybe I should hire a bunch of people, because I'm not quite certain what I'm going to get. And because of, the price point, I was able to do that. So what I ended up doing was, I ended up hiring, I think it was 7 or 8, and I'll show that, 7 or 8 artists basically to draw Emmy, my first daughter, or one daughter. And then basically here are the different results that I got back. And as you can see, each of these artists basically got that exact same brief that I showed you. And you can see just how different they all interpreted it. And so luckily, the second one up here, I actually really liked. I thought it met kind of the criteria that I was looking for, looked enough like my daughter that I was happy with it. And so then I really started paying more attention to that Fiverr seller, and then we actually went back and forth a little bit where I gave feedback. So let me see if I find it. So what I did is I would print out the 2D sketch that they gave me. I would mark it up and kind of annotate, different things like thicker eyebrows, basically things that I felt would make it look more like my daughter. So she has a freckle, she has thicker eyebrows, slightly larger teeth around her chin. And so after doing that a couple times, and just so you know, the artist usually will kind of denote in their profile how many revisions that you get. So after doing that a couple times, we really got to a good point where I was happy with the 2D sketch of Emmy, and then I kind of transitioned into Edison. And so basically I started again with kind of the same idea, and because I was going with an artist that I had already worked with, we kind of focused more on, okay, what is unique about Edison? So, she has a thicker nose, pointier chin. I like that hairstyle, versus like this hairstyle. I really wanted this hairstyle because it would be better in a gameplay situation. So I provided this. And then, sorry, I know I'm jumping around a lot. And then for Edison, concept sketch, this is basically what I got back. And so just like Emmy, first, sorry, I'll go back to Emmy real quick because there's one thing I forgot to say. First, what they give you is this kind of line art, and then the artist gave me basically the colored in one. So basically, once we kind of nailed this, the line art, then they painted it in. So with Edison concept sketch, again, I was provided with the kind of final art. This is a T-pose captured. There's no 3/4 view here, but we do have the front view, side view, and back view, which is super important. And so once I had these, I was super happy. So I had my 2D concept sketches. Now I'm ready to hire a 3D artist. And so unfortunately, when you go to Fiverr, hiring a 3D artist, the prices change quite different. So you don't really have the luxury of hiring, 9 3D artists to hope that one of them meets your criteria. So I actually spent way more time kind of vetting out 3D artists, sending them messages, kind of looking at the stuff that they've done, and then, kind of making sure before I hired them, we could meet my vision. And let me see it. This is the 3D artist I went with. And I will say this, I got incredibly lucky with the 3D artist that I ended up hiring. One, not only was he super professional, amazingly, nice and sweet and just communicative and took feedback really well, but we actually became kind of close friends. And, he always is asking me how my kids are and so forth, but I'm trying to go back to the very beginning so we can kind of start where the conversation was. So let me keep scrolling this up. But I basically whittled it down to 3 3D artists. I was close to hiring all 3 for about $250 to $300 a piece. One of them actually messaged me and said, "Hey, I can't start your project for a month," which, in hindsight was super lucky. And so I ended up hiring this guy first, David, and, he kind of was a home run. And so you can say, I kind of said, "Hey, David, I've been using Fiverr to get 2D sketches. Can you look at my brief and let me know if you can do this?" And so here's his kind of 3D brief that I found. And I think, let me see if the character's on here that really kind of, let's see, he's got I think it was this image style that was like, okay, this is kind of exactly what I'm looking for from a stylistic perspective. He understood kind of like low poly mesh for game dev. It's always nice on Fiverr when they show an example of their meshes, because you can kind of know, what's under the hood, and you can, if you see a real clean mesh, there's a better chance that you're gonna be working with more of a professional. And so I hired him, and it was $250. Now, let me tell you, $250 may be a lot for a hobby, but $250 for a 3D artist of this quality is nothing. And so, I made sure anytime David delivered me anything, I made sure to tip him quite a bit more than what he was offering. So I guess more so the point is, $250 is maybe a lot when you don't know what you're getting, but once he delivered the quality that I was expecting, and basically more than what I was expecting, I would tip him a lot more. And also sidebar with, to pay for a lot of this game, I actually ended up building a website for a company on the side, really quick. I think it was like 2 weeks of work, a couple $1,000s, and I just took all that money and I dumped it into this game because I've always wanted to build this. So I would send, so I sent him the concept sketch. He said it was great. He would need, I think it was a couple weeks. And then the first thing he ended up delivering to me, and let me rewind this, was something like this. And so as you can see, you have the T-pose represented here. You basically are showing the mesh. front, three-quarter, side, and not back view. And so when I first got this, I was like, oh wow, he really nailed it. Like the hair looks great, looks just like my daughter. It's really cute, it's really kind of cute and kind of what I was looking for. And so he allowed revisions. And so, when you saw with the 2D sketch, I basically printed it out and marked it up. But with the 3D, it was a little more nuanced. And so I ended up making him YouTube videos. Turn my volume up. Style perfectly. I'm super happy with the quality of this so far. So thank you for that. This is looking. So you can kind of hear me walking through. And so what I would do is I would basically say, hey, the nose should be, a little more round, or hey, make sure this birthmark is there, or her, skin tone's a little bit darker, so can you do that? And then I think I even called out the eyebrows in here. So her eyebrows are a little bit thicker. So I made sure that he got, here, kind of toggling on and off the eyebrows. So he delivered, they were a little bit sharp. So I toggled in Photoshop, make them a little bit thicker. Showed him some pictures of just how crazy thick those eyebrows are. And I think this style of feedback worked really well because I was able to clearly illustrate what I was looking for. I was able to, having a graphic design background, programming background, I was able to use Photoshop to kind of show exactly what I was looking for. And he really kind of nailed it. And so this is kind of one of the final graphics that we got to, side, three-quarter, back. And I just really love the kind of outcome of that. And so funny enough, I kind of took the same pattern that we did with, actually, let me pause right there and go back to, let me show you something really quick. So he delivered me the first kind of asset, and then, where is that video? Sorry, I'm just looking for something really quick. I have this video. I think it's in. So he delivered me the 3D model, and then I was ready to kind of take it into Sprite Kit and basically start going through it. Of course, I can't find the thing that I'm looking for now. Let me go to QuickTime because I had it open at one point. Let me go to QuickTime. Open recent untitled movie. Yeah, this is what I was looking for. So this is the Sprite Kit game. This is the iPad before you saw the tvOS. And so I got his model into Sprite Kit. And so I was like, okay, wow, the model looks a lot better. It's simple. I did the rigging for kind of the walk and the idle and the jumping, even though I'm not, a great animator or don't do that often. But so I kind of got to this point. And this is where I kind of got to the point where, like, okay, I spent all this money. Well, relatively. I spent a decent amount of money on a 2D sketch, on a 3D sketch, and I really just wasn't quite happy with the quality of Scene Kit. Yes, this would have been great for my daughters. They would have been happy. They would have had a blast playing this, and this would have been a feat in itself. But me, I definitely have a certain expectation. So I was like, you know what? How can I take this to the next level? And I'd always heard about Unity and Unreal, these kind of game engines. I'd never really done anything with them. And so I decided to take the jump. So I did a bunch of research into Unity, and sorry, keeps playing, into Unity, Unreal. I ended up going with Unreal because of the rendering quality. If you're not familiar with the differences between the both, spend a lot of time looking up, but I ended up going into Unreal, and I knew nothing about Unreal, and so I decided to learn it. So let me jump over to, I think I've covered all the stuff. Okay, so let me go into Unreal. So decided to go into Unreal. And so let me, I guess I'll give you a tidbit. So obviously the first thing when you're learning anything new nowadays, I think you go to YouTube. So that's that. And then the other thing is Unreal comes with these kind of starter templates. And so there's like first person shooter, third person, I don't know what they call it shooter, but third person, and so forth. And so I knew my game was a third person style game. And so I basically used their third person template to kind of reverse engineer everything kind of most important, because the third person template is basically everything you need to know to kind of start building your game. It starts with Unreal starts with these kind of mannequins, they call them, which are basically 3D characters that are rigged. They have animations, and so you can start the third person template, hit kind of this play button up here, and you can be walking around a 3D space right away. And then so what you can then do is you can go in kind of the content drawer, and this is my game, so I've reorganized everything a little bit, but you can go into the content drawer and start looking at how are things organized, how are things kind of working, and you can reverse engineer how it's built. And so in conjunction with YouTube, that's how I did a lot of this game. So with that, the first thing you start learning about is blueprints, right? And character blueprints. So I'm going to go into Edison's character blueprint. And so the two kind of most important concepts are the animation blueprint, which is kind of what we're looking at now, and then kind of the character blueprint, which we'll talk about. So actually, let me start with the other blueprint, because I feel like that's. Let me go into the viewport. So this is kind of your starting point of, this is my character blueprint. This has all my logic in here for my character. So this is kind of crazy, but this is where you do everything from like setting up your mouse, your input, your touch controls, jumping, and then specific logic for your character. So if I go back to the viewport, you can see this links to my skeletal mesh. And then it also has my animation blueprint right here, anim class. And so over here is my animation blueprint. So if you're wondering what the difference is, the animation blueprint is basically, you can see this kind of state machine right here. It's basically how it toggles all the animations together from if you can see here, the state machine it's in idle. So you can see she's in this idle phase right here, kind of blinking. And then in the other blueprint I was telling you, if the, let me jump back to that. Sorry if I'm jumping back and forth. You have something called a character component or character movement component right here. And this is actually the thing that controls your character. And so when you jump on the character movement component, setting basically this kind of jump boolean right here that it's looking for to kind of change the state. And the same thing for walk, it changes the character speed. So if I'm in this character movement over here, you can see that there's different walking speed, running speed, and so forth. And so when that's changed in the gameplay, it changes here. So if I go to walk run, you can see the speed variable, which is being set in the game, but then that changes the blend. And so we'll talk about a blend space, a 1D, 2D blend space in a second. But yeah, so that's kind of the animation blueprint. And so let's talk about the mesh. So let me go to my character, Edison. So here's the skeletal mesh right here. I'll go to asset details. So this is kind of the mesh that you kind of import into Unreal, right? And if it's rigged, it'll have a skeleton associated with it. And so here's kind of that skeleton tree. You can go through all the bones, and this one has a ton of bones because the face is rigged as well. Here's all the materials you can kind of see, and so all these materials are different, and that was important because I wanted to change the shirt and stuff at runtime. And then there's the skeletal mesh. And let me go back and show you the bones. Not all hierarchy, that's too many bones. It's been a while since I've been in here. Okay, but I mean, you kind of get the point. The skeleton is basically in here. So skeleton, mesh, and then the third piece is the physical. So this helps you with collisions and stuff. So you can kind of see the collisions with my mesh and the different constraints. So that's kind of how you import it in. So that's a static mesh, right? So there's no animations at this point. It's a static mesh, it has a skeleton. And so we start talking about animations. So you can see here's all the different animations for the gameplay. And so when you think about the standard ones are idle, jump, and kind of walk, run. So if you look at this is just an animation sequence. You can see the kind of keyframes down here. It has the notifies for sounds, but this is just a walk, right? And then in turn you have the same thing for run, let me find run. Where's run? So many animations at this point. Oh, here's run. So here's run, right? And then what you then create is something called a blend space. So you have this animation walk run. Oh no, that's not the blend space. Sorry, that's something I was experimenting with. So here's the blend space basically. So a blend space is basically you have two animations, right? And that animation basically blends between, or the blend space blends between them based on a variable. So in this case, I go to asset details. The variable here is speed. So I think my direction and speed. And if I remember correctly, I know this is different on my Mac. Hold on. It's amazing how much you kind of forget in a couple weeks of not doing anything. Okay, here it is. So I'm holding down Command on my Mac. So you can see I'm kind of changing this. This is basically previewing kind of where I'm at. So this one, so if I go all the way to the right, we have different, so this one we have direction and speed. Okay, so I'm refogging my memory. So speed on the y-axis, direction on the x-axis. And so if you go all the way up, let me hit play. If you go all the way up, you can see run. So here's y-axis. So if I go all the way up, you're running. And if I go all the way down, you're kind of at idle. And this one is actually a combination of three animations. 0 is basically our idle state, which then blends into our walk state. So you can kind of see blending from idle to walk, and then from walk blending into run. And again, the variable here is speed, and then the other variable is direction, which I don't know if it shows it in the not really do, because you have -180 to 180 on the x-axis. But because this is not showing that kind of rotation, so that's the blend space. And then the other thing I want to talk about is animation montage. And so like jumping, my jumper or my attack as a montage. So this is the montage for attack. And so the reason why it's a montage is because when you so if we go back to that state machine. So let me go to Blueprint, Edison, animation state, animation blueprint. Let me go back to the state machine and then go back one. Here we go. Here we go. So if we go back to the state machine, and if you interrupt, and so right now we have jump, walk, run, and idle, right? So you see we don't have attack on there. And so using an animation montage is if I'm in, say, a walking state or a running state and I hit the attack button, it will seamlessly kind of blend into the attack montage and then back into whatever state it was before. So if I go back to the montage, you have these blend out timing. Where's blend out? Here, blend out and blend in. So this kind of allows you to kind of configure how well it blends in and out. So that's that's kind of character stuff. I think you know what I forgot to talk about was, let me talk about this real quick. So working with the 3D artist again, he was really amazing, and so. Not only did he help me with the 3D modeling, but we kind of went back and forth on the animations as well. So he made for me walk, run, idle, and attack. And so this is what he would send me over. Basically, and my free edition of Maya has run out, so it's just the FBX previewer. And so this is what we would send over, right? So this is a preview of kind of the jump animation. And the thing that him and I were working on and that I really wanted to capture is the hair. Look at how the hair kind of flaps up and down. I thought that was a really important detail. And so you can see this is super low poly in the sense, for game development, it's really well. And so like this is how we were kind of working on those meshes. So that was the jump animation. And then I wanted to throw this in there. So obviously every time him and I worked on animation, I would pay him gladly. But sometimes there was, I just wanted different animations. And so if you've ever heard of Mixamo, so Mixamo is actually a free site. And as long as your skeleton is rigged properly, you can actually come on here and download these animations for free and then import them into Unreal quite easily. So I think this froze while I was talking about the other stuff. So I can see I import my model into Mixamo, and then, say I go through this and I'm looking for a specific animation. Here's this dying animation, right? You see, perfect, right? My animations start changing. Now, granted, skeletons might not map one-to-one, so they do have some sort of, fine tuning over here. If your arms are kind of, see how they're kind of colliding with the body at that point. So if you jack this up, the arms won't collide. And so you can actually go through here and find animations that you like. So I actually ended up using this for swimming animations. I ended up using this for a dancing animation. I'm trying to think what else. I think there was another animation I used this for, but it works super well. And then once you've kind of find the animation that you're looking for, you can then download it and then import it into Unreal. And so if I go back to Edison's animation, yes, on my swimming, treading water, I did in there. Head shake I got from Mixamo. Driving I worked with my 3D modeler. But let's talk about driving real quick because I didn't cover that part. So the other model that I had made was the Porsche model. So when my kids were really young, they had this Power Wheel that was a Porsche. I'm a big Porsche fan, and they loved it, and so I thought that'd be a crucial part of the game. And so what I did was I put together a bunch of images of kind of the Power Wheel, and then I hired a different 3D modeler to kind of build that, and then I'll show you what was delivered. This is in Blender. We'll just do a kind of a basic lighting. And so yeah, you can kind of see the 3D model. We'll go to wireframe so you can kind of see the wireframe. So yeah, and then this is that. So I thought this turned out really great. The proportions were, mapped up really nicely with the game I was building. And then to actually use this within Unreal, there's actually something called Chaos Vehicle. And so let me go to car. It's car skeleton because this will kind of show Chaos Vehicle. So with Chaos Vehicle, you're basically creating a makeshift chassis, right? And so the most important part about a chassis is basically denoting where the wheels are. So each of these has a skeleton for each wheel. And then there's these blueprints that kind of describe the wheel. But the most important part for Chaos Vehicle, so if I go back to blueprint, car, viewport, and you'll kind of see. It's funny is when I go back and forth between Blender and Unreal, I quickly muscle memory for zooming in and out and so forth. But so if you look at this, it looks like this because I'm kind of representing all the different states of what the car can look like. So Edison's in the car driving. This over here is basically the position that I want to kind of when they exit the vehicle, they kind of reposition themselves here, and of course the Disney ears in case they pick that in the selection. But just as I was kind of telling you about the character, in Edison's character, there's the character component. So in the vehicle, there's the vehicle component, and the vehicle component is really cool. So it talks about the engine, like how powerful it is, max RPM, torque, and so forth. And so this is where you do all the kind of fine tuning of the car. You set up the kind of collision of the car and so forth, and then you bring it into your game and you can drive it around, and you don't really have to be an expert in kind of car mechanics. So that was really cool. So that was that. Enemy. So let me talk about the enemy. So enemy was a late addition to the game. Again, as I talked about in the opening, I felt like I really needed an antagonist, and so for this one, Unreal actually does free assets every month. So it was actually October, and they had this Unreal, what they were calling an undead pack. So I have this sorted by store content, and so I got this free undead pack, which came with a ton of different characters, and I ended up going with, I think it's the Goblin. These funny names. The Goblin, and just like as you saw that I had to have all that stuff made for Edison, this came with everything you need. So it has animation sequences, it has blend spaces, it has everything you need. So the walk animation and so forth. And so that's how the enemy came to be. And then I'll talk about the town real quick. So from a level perspective, I have basically a couple levels, right? I have Glen Ellen level, main menu level, player selection, and controller view. But as far as like the level modeling, so I'll go into models, and then I have different pieces of the town. So let me go into, of course, Unreal likes to glitch out on my Mac sometimes. So let me go in here, so it'll show. So here's a piece of the town, right? And this is what the model looks like with the textures. And I pieced out the town because it was easier to kind of model. And of course, it has a collision assigned to it. But I ended up modeling all the pieces of the town in Blender. Let's see. Here's some screenshots in Blender. This is just a technique. So when you're doing like UV mapping and texturing, let me see. Can't remember where I have the town file. Sounds, files, models. No, of course I don't want to bore you guys with all this. I can't remember where I have the town file, and it's only because this is on my attached storage, and I had it. Sync Mac. Oh, of course I can't. Oh, you know what? Let me just use Finder. Even though Finder kind of sucks. Search for building because that's what it was called. And I can't find it. Game intro. You guys are probably watching this. You're like, you probably can see it. Driving source, resources. Town girls. I can see it in my head. I literally had a file called building. And of course, Finder can't find it. Finder can't find it. How ironic is that? No, it wasn't that. No, I think it's important to show this. Oh, you know what? It's probably in my recent in Blender. Buildings at Blender. Don't save that. Come on, Blender. Got a lot of files open. Luckily, I have a Apple Silicon Mac. Oh, so while this loads, a funny thing I will say is, I'm a Mac person, right? So this whole process, I've been using a Mac. Unreal Engine is really developed for a PC, and so there was definitely a lot of learning curves for developing on a Mac for Unreal Engine. So let me switch to this view. Okay, so here's Blender. You can see I kind of was building town pieces, and of course when I was importing them to Unreal, I had to zero them all out, so they're kind of stacked on it. When I say zero them out, make sure they're all 0, 0, 0. So when they imported into Unreal, they were kind of in the right position. But let's focus on this one. So this is a piece of the town. Of course, my textures, because I don't know where this file is, are probably all messed up. But yeah, you can kind of see this is a piece of the town. So in Blender, I would build out the pieces of town. I would do the texturing. They're purple because the assets are missing, because when I moved them over to my network drive, they probably unlinked to the files, and that's brings me to another point I want to talk about. So what I ended up doing is I'd go into Unreal, I'd go to Quixel Bridge. So if you're unaware of Quixel Bridge, this is where you can get a bunch of free materials. So if you come into Quixel Bridge and you search for brick, come Oh, because I had a different filter. Search for brick, surfaces, brick. You can find amazing like textures that look amazing. Of course, it's an amazing choice. You can find textures that are great. They work great in Unreal. You can download different quality levels and so forth if you're using nanite and so forth. Like you can get away with different things, but some of these are optimized for nanite. And so then I would download these. I would then grab the PNGs and so forth, bring them into Blender, and then I would basically use the Quixel content within Blender, but then, obviously it would work in Unreal. So yeah, so these are kind of snippets of the town, train station, pieces of the train, the road, which doesn't look too great in here, but I'll show you the road. So the road I actually ended up building in pieces and then assembling it. So if you look at the road, let me show you. Come on. Zoom out. Again, going back and forth between Blender and Unreal. It's basically modularized, or it's basically pieces of the road, like a road piece. And then what I do is I created a road blueprint, and then using, so I guess you would call this procedural. Of course, I want to use Blender. So you can see here's the road, kind of the full road for my game, but it's all generated in the construction script. So this script right here is building the road, and then the way I did that is with a data file. So basically this, I don't know if it's the best way to do it, but it worked for me. I basically have this variable, which is an array, and this describes the road, and then I basically loop through this file, and then I create a road from that. So yeah, the road is basically a bunch of separate pieces, and they're basically hierarchical instant static messages. And so what that is, basically it only has to load it in once. So like, this could take up a lot of memory. If you weren't doing that, this could take up a lot of memory because it's, pretty detailed mesh. It's quite large. But because I'm basically segmenting into smaller chunks and then using the hierarchical instant static meshes, it basically grabs the file once, loads it into memory, and then renders it. And so there's a bunch of pros and cons to that, and I won't talk too much about that. But I did the same thing for the railroad. So here's, of course, that's perspective. So for the railroad, so basically that's the blueprint. If I was to go into models, railroad, you can see how it's just a chunk. So yeah, let me go into the game real quick because I want to talk just a little bit about some finer details. So like, outfit selection, my girls really love that. They can customize their character, and so for each of them, they like different things. Obviously, if you have kids, you know that. So Emmy likes trolls, and she likes PJ Masks. Edison likes this PJ Mask, and so I allowed to kind of pick those. We'll choose this one. We'll go into the game. Turn this down, and then I'm actually going to go to a different part I didn't show you earlier for level streaming. And let me drag over there. Oh, I forgot. I need to run over there because I forgot the curb is too tall. But I'll use this donut to let me run faster. So this part. So this is level streaming over here. So you can see it doesn't load in right away. And usually with level streaming, you'd have some smart mechanism to kind of hide the stream. So I think a lot of games like. Of course, she's got the thing stuck because there's a bug. But this part, hold on a second. Let me do this because that's gonna aggravate me that the particle thing got stuck on there. I think it was a bug when you get too close to the level streaming, and if you still have that particle thing on. Oh, you know what? No, it was a bug with the donut, the donut mesh. Okay, so it's gone now. So let me go back. So yeah, as I was saying, usually with AAA games, they'll hide the level streaming by, you'll go through like a building, and so you can't really see what's going on. And then all of a sudden you have something else loaded in. But at least you can kind of see how it loads in. And I'm streaming it because the stream right here, no pun intended, you can see the water actually, is pretty realistic. If you remember where we started with that Sprite Kit example, this water looks much more real. And let me move the camera. Of course, my mouse. Let me go under. So you can see, underwater, we're using of course, I'm not gonna remember the name of the name of it at this moment. I'll show once I get done with this. I'll show you what it is. You can see I have fish kind of going through there, swimming around, and you can see kind of the underwater view. You can kind of jump out. I think there's some lily pads under there. Remember, if I put it in this version, you can see this kind of bridge, and this is actually modeled after a river that's by our house. And then, of course, you have, I don't know if I talked about Emmy following me. She's basically an AI component. And then you have also the enemy AI component. And then this is a fort, or it's like a shelter that's by our house too, that I thought would be fun. Let me talk about, let me go to, I'll actually go to the Glen Ellen level. Don't save. See how fast this loads. Okay, loaded pretty quickly. So you can see the green right away. That's for the AI. That's the AI boundary. Navigation mesh. And then if I go over here, of course, post-processing volume. As soon as I saw it, I remembered it, post-processing. So that gives you like that underwater effect, which is pretty cool. And so yeah, you can kind of, and then the trees are basically in the foliage. So if you go over here to kind of foliage, you're allowed to kind of paint foliage, and foliage uses that instant meshing, the instant message stuff that I was talking about for the road. Foliage is kind of done the same way, so it's more performant. Landscape, I actually did some landscaping painting on here. So if you look at, let me go to paint. Of course, this is a bug. While it loads the shaders, it'll load in the correct shaders. But so landscape painting allows you to use kind of one material and paint different things. So you can see that I have this gravel here. Let me hit P and toggle off that. I have gravel, I have wood chips, I have grass, I have so forth. So all that is painted onto kind of one landscape mesh. This is a bug. This should be showing the right meshes. I think if I right click and do rebuild materials, it will, yeah, there it goes. It fixes it. So you can see the different materials you can paint on there. So that's kind of cool. In landscape mode, what's kind of fun is, and one thing that is really cool about so if I go to this about Unreal, if I go to this directional light and not that, and I go to rotating. Oh, you know what? There's a key. I'm trying to remember what the mouse key command for this was. I can't remember it right now. But if I rotate this, of course I'm rotating the wrong thing. So let me go back to this. There's a key. I think there's a key command. But if you change this and you change it more drastically, you can get. Of course, there's a fog. You can kind of see that fog effect that I was using for my time of day. But you can get kind of really cool. Let me turn off the fog. Sky, extra the fog. Let me turn this off. You can kind of really cool effects. Like you can have a nighttime effect. You can have like a early morning. So you can see the kind of sun moving. You can get kind of a dusk effect, and so forth. And just by changing the position of the sun, and so where I settle on it, is some people will animate the position of the sun during gameplay, and your shadows will kind of, some ambient noise outside, your shadows will kind of animate and change with the sun. But I picked a certain time of day so that the characters were illuminated properly. So that's kind of the town. If I go to the player selection, of course, I hit the wrong one. Player selection level. I'm not going to save that. I'll just show you really quick kind of how that was done. So I kind of made a makeshift kind of photo studio backdrop with kind of 3-point lighting because, you know, the lighting was super important. For that, you can see the camera there. And then we haven't really talked about UI or, you know, basically widgets, but widget blueprints, but like that's a totally different paradigm. But so this is a widget blueprint. So this gets overlaid over the screen. This has a graph, so a logic graph, just like the levels and everything do node-based blueprint. And I guess that's something else I didn't mention before is Unreal. In Unreal, you can do C++ or you can do Node, depending on your skill level. I found that everything I needed to do, I could do with the Node solution, other than some quirks with like player control and controller assignment. I had to go with C++ for that. But mostly everything else was Node-based. So there's that. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I want to cover. So we talked about blueprints, we talked about levels, character, kind of talked about third-party content from the marketplace, Quixel Bridge. Yeah, I think I covered everything. So if you have any questions, oh, you know what? Well, let me show you. Sorry, I'm super nerdy about this stuff. Let me show you one more thing because I remember building this showcase thing that I thought was cool. So go behind there. So like here, and we'll hit play. So here's kind of an animation showcase of all the different ME animations when we were kind of debugging everything and making sure everything worked properly. So I ended up doing one of these for Edison and for ME. So that was really neat. And so it was cool. And we talked about blueprints. I won't talk, I mean, collision and overlapping and stuff like that. We won't talk about treats, pulse effect, characters, chaos. This is kind of some things I was trying, input. Really from a store content perspective. So you saw that, you know, we started off like me kind of having my characters built out. But the nice thing about Unreal 2 is they have a really rich ecosystem of marketplace. So if you want to find different things, so like, you know, I needed, you know, stuff for my town, right? Because I didn't want to model every last thing. So like I go to this kind of construction starter pack. And then, oh, sorry, that's the input thing that we were talking about. Let me go to where I know I have a good one. Stylized forest under mailbox. Okay, mailboxes will do. So let's go to this one. So like I didn't want to, you know, model, you know, a ton of different mailboxes, right? Let me close this. So here, this is. Of course, it's going to wig out because of on my Mac. So let me reopen this. There it goes. So you can see I got these from the asset store, and you know, like I really needed this mailbox. I think that's probably one of the only ones I use out of this. So I use that mailbox, and then the fish was called bench. That's a good one. So like I needed some benches, and again, these prices vary anywhere from 5 to 20. But of course, as I told you, I had some money. So like, here's a bench pack, right? And so like, I'm not gonna model my own benches. So I grabbed these benches, junk food, Halloween pumpkins, stylized forest, crate, mega scans is part of Quixel, stylized forests, where I got the trees. So you can see, and so how you get there is actually here. So marketplace. And, oh, you know, I can actually show you my marketplace library that I've kind of amassed during this process. See if this loads. Come on. Super slow. Okay, here we are. So you can see all the different things I bought. So I bought the bench pack, construction kit. I think that's the one thing I was looking for that just had different, the porta potty, some different barricades, I don't know if it shows the price on here, but the most important thing with these is the supported platform. And so I'm building on a Mac, and I was building in version 5.0 and 5.1. So this supported basically what I was building. And so you would kind of come in here and you'd say, you know what, I'm looking for street signs, do a little search, and then say, you found signs that you liked, and it met your kind of criteria for engine version, and then your platform you would buy. This is actually quite expensive for street signs. Here's one for $4.99. And so depending on your kind of needs, you would kind of go through that. And the other thing you would look for is like nanite support. And so I should say my game isn't using nanite because it wasn't supported on Mac. It is using Lumen. So if you want to get into Unreal, Lumen is kind of the global indirect global illumination, indirect lighting, all that fun stuff. It really makes your game look realistic. So I'm using Lumen. I'm not using nanite. I'm using Niagara for the particles. And yeah, those are really kind of the core concepts. I wish nanite was supported. Maybe at the time of the recording of this video, because I haven't been using Unreal, maybe it's supported. Oh, and the other thing I should denote too is the game running via Rosetta for Intel, because at the time the Apple Silicon support when I was doing the game wasn't truly supported. Like the IDE definitely wasn't built in Apple Silicon unless you were building it yourself. But if you were just downloading it from Unreal, it was an Intel app. So the funny thing is, if you think about it, all this basically is running kind of through Rosetta, which is emulation, Intel x86, or no, I guess Apple Silicon is ARM, so x86 emulation or Intel emulation, and it's still quite performant. So yeah, I think I'm going to wrap up this video because I'm rambling at this point. So if you have any questions about any of the process, please feel free to reach out, and thanks for taking the time to watch this.